What if the oldest gold ever found on this planet wasn't dug up in Egypt, but pulled out of the ground by accident, by a man digging a cable trench in Bulgaria? What if a stone door weighing several tons still turns smoothly on a hinge carved over 2,000 years ago? And what if an entire royal capital, streets, palace, temples, and all, is sitting right now, 20 meters under a lake, and the government that flooded it knew exactly what it was drowning? This is the Bulgaria nobody puts on a postcard. 6 mysterious sites. 1 country? Stay till the end. The last one connects to something every single Bulgarian carries in their pocket. Before we go underground, let's talk about the country itself. Because Bulgaria hides more than tombs. Bulgaria is one of the only nations in Europe that has kept its original name unbroken since it was founded in 681 AD. While empires around it rose, collapsed, and rewrote their borders a dozen times over, this one name simply stayed. And buried near the coastal city of Varna is something even older than the country's name. What many researchers call the oldest processed gold ever found anywhere on the planet. Exactly how old, and exactly what that means for human history, we'll get to later in this video, because the number alone is hard to believe. Bulgaria isn't only ancient, it's quietly one of the most important economies you've never thought about. It supplies somewhere between 70 and 85% of the entire world's rose oil, sometimes called liquid gold, because it takes thousands of hand-picked petals just to extract a single gram. And in the last 2 decades, the country has transformed again, this time into a growing European tech and IT hub, largely thanks to a flat 10% income tax that's drawn in outsourcing companies and software firms from across the continent. Ancient gold, modern gold, same soil. And here's one that genuinely surprises people. Bulgarian body language runs backwards compared to almost the entire world. Shake your head side to side here, and you're saying yes. Nod your head up and down, and you're saying no. Tourists have walked away from entire conversations, completely confused, convinced a shopkeeper agreed to something they'd actually just refused. It's a small detail, but it tells you something bigger. This is a country that quietly does things its own way and has for a very long time. Now, some geography. Bulgaria sits in southeastern Europe, on the Balkan Peninsula, bordered by Romania to the north, Serbia and North Macedonia to the west, Greece and Turkey to the south, and the Black Sea to the east. The country covers roughly 110,000 square kilometers, a little smaller than the US state of Ohio, and is home to just under 6.5 million people. Small on the map, layered with mystery far beyond its size. And that mystery starts in a mountain valley, at a tomb whose stone door still turns, smoothly, 2,000 years after the king who built it died. The king who never left, a tomb door that still turns, and a capital city underwater mounds. The Valley of the Thracian Kings. In the Kazanlak Valley, archaeologist Georgi Kitov spent years excavating a stretch of land so dense with royal burial mounds that locals only half-jokingly call it the Valley of the Thracian Kings. Inside the mound, known as Golyama Kosmatka, sits a 4th century BC tomb widely attributed to the Thracian king Seuthopolis III. Its entrance is sealed by a massive, multi-ton stone door. And remarkably, that door still rotates, smoothly, on hinges carved directly into the stone over 2,000 years ago. No metal, no modern engineering. Just precision-cut rock that has outlasted every empire that came after it. But the single most striking discovery didn't come from inside the burial chamber. It came from the narrow entrance corridor, the dromos, where researchers uncovered a bronze head with inset glass eyes, crafted with such lifelike precision that art historians consider it one of the finest surviving portrait bronzes from the entire Hellenistic world. Many believe they're looking at the actual face of King Seuthopolis III, cast in bronze while he was still alive. A short distance away, in a neighboring mound called Seuthopolis, the same excavation team uncovered something equally rare. A solid gold funerary mask, weighing 673 grams of pure gold, depicting a face with distinct, slightly asymmetric features. Not idealized, not generic. This looks like an actual person's face, cast in gold to accompany them into death. To this day, it remains the only fully intact Thracian gold death mask ever discovered anywhere in Bulgaria. One detail from Golyama Kosmatka still stops visitors cold. Right at the entrance, before the stone door was ever sealed, archaeologists found the remains of a horse and a dog, sacrificed there deliberately as part of the burial ritual. A final offering laid down moments before the king was shut inside forever. 2 mounds, 2 royal faces, one in bronze, one in gold, separated by only a short walk across the same valley, yet frequently confused with one another, even in official accounts. But Seuthopolis III isn't only famous for how he was buried. He's famous for what he built while he was still alive. And that's where this story gets genuinely strange, because his capital city is still standing. It's just 11 meters underwater. Seuthopolis, the sunken capital Seuthopolis III, didn't just rule the Odrysian kingdom, the most powerful Thracian state of its era, around 325 to 315 BC, after the empire of Alexander the Great began breaking apart. He founded his own capital from scratch and named it after himself, Seuthopolis. By the standards of Thracian architecture, it was radical. Streets laid out on a grid, a central agora, a fortified royal palace, temples, defensive walls. It's considered one of the first Thracian cities built with a fully planned, Greek-style urban layout, rather than growing organically over time. For over 2,000 years, nobody knew exactly where it was. Then, in 1948, Bulgarian archaeologists carrying out rescue excavations ahead of a new dam project near the town of Kazanlak broke through into streets, foundations, and temple walls that hadn't seen daylight since antiquity. Full excavation was completed by 1953. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The communist government of the time knew precisely what they had found and built the dam anyway. The Perperikon reservoir filled in, and the ruins of an entire royal capital were deliberately left submerged under roughly 20 meters of water, where they remain to this day. Divers and researchers have surveyed the site since, and in 2005, a Bulgarian architect proposed an ambitious plan: build a circular dam wall, nearly 1 1/3 kilometers around, directly inside the reservoir. Pump out the water within it and expose Seuthopolis as an in-situ open-air museum, right in the middle of the lake. The estimated cost runs into the tens of millions of euros, and decades later, the funding still hasn't come together. So the capital stays exactly where it's been since the 1950s. A fully mapped ancient city, sitting silently under the surface of a reservoir most boaters have no idea they're floating over. The same king who still turns his own tomb door 2,000 years after his death also built a capital city that an entire government chose to drown rather than delay a construction project. If you've made it this far, this is exactly where I'd hit subscribe, because what's coming next is even older. gold pulled out of the ground by pure accident that predates the pyramids by 1500 Varna necropolis. The world's oldest gold. In 1972, on the outskirts of the city of Varna, a construction worker was digging a routine cable trench. His excavator bucket struck something metallic. He had just accidentally opened the door to one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. What followed was the extraction of more than 3,000 gold artifacts, weighing over 6 kilograms combined. Pulled from a burial ground archaeologists would come to call the Varna necropolis. Radiocarbon dating placed the site between 4,600 and 4,200 BC. To put that in perspective, this gold predates the Great Pyramid of Giza by roughly 1,500 years and predates the earliest known Mesopotamian gold by around 1,000 years. Long before Egypt had a pharaoh, long before Sumer had a written language. Someone on the shore of the Black Sea had already learned to mine, shape, and wear gold as a symbol of power. The most extraordinary single find came from grave number 43, the remains of a high-status male, buried with a gold-sheathed scepter, now recognized as the oldest known gold symbol of royal authority anywhere on Earth. Older than any comparable object from Egypt, older than anything comparable from Mesopotamia.
But the graves that unsettle researchers most aren't the ones packed with treasure. They're the ones with nothing in them at all. Archaeologists uncovered several cenotaphs, empty, symbolic graves containing no human remains whatsoever. In their place, clay masks were laid exactly where a face should have been, surrounded by ceremonial gold. Nobody has ever definitively explained why. A missing body, lost at sea or in battle. A ritual honoring someone who hadn't yet died. The people who buried these masks left no written record to ask. What Varna proved, more than anything, is that complex societies, with clear social ranks, inherited status, and concentrated wealth, didn't first appear in the Near East as long assumed. They appeared here, on the Black Sea coast, roughly 1,000 years, earlier than anywhere else currently known in the archaeological record. If Varna proves this land was hiding treasure underground long before anyone else on Earth, the next site proves the land itself could raise a fortress without a single person's help. Fear, Belogradchik fortress and rocks. Picture a fortress where the enemy's first obstacle isn't a wall, built by soldiers. It's a 200-meter cliff that nature built millions of years before those soldiers were even born. That's Belogradchik. The site is dominated by massive sandstone pinnacles, some reaching 200 meters into the sky. And here's the detail that separates it from almost every other fortress in Europe. The builders didn't wall off the whole perimeter. They only needed to construct 12-meter-thick masonry walls across the gaps between the rock towers. The mountain itself did the rest of the defending. Those towers aren't just tall, they're old. Geologists trace these sandstone layers back roughly 230 million years to a time when this land sat under ancient rivers and shallow seas. Ever since, wind and rain have been slowly sculpting the red and yellow stone into shapes that look unmistakably like human figures, crouching beasts, even collapsing castle walls. Locals have been naming these shapes for centuries. The schoolgirl, the monks, the rider, and every name comes with its own legend. Belogradchik has also seen an unusual amount of history pass through it. It began as a Roman observation outpost in the 1st century AD, was expanded under the Byzantines, was heavily fortified by medieval Bulgarian ruler Tsar Ivan Stratimir, and was still garrisoned by Ottoman forces all the way until the late 19th century. 4 empires, 1 fortress, never fully abandoned. And just a short distance away sits something even stranger, Magura Cave, where paintings made from bat guano, some 8,000 years old, appear to trace what researchers believe is one of the earliest known solar calendars in all of Europe. That combination of natural spectacle and ancient engineering didn't go unnoticed by the rest of the world either. In 2007, Belogradchik's rock formations were named a finalist in the global campaign to select the new 7 wonders of nature, competing against landmarks on every continent. A fortress built by geology, a calendar painted in guano, a rock formation that nearly became a world wonder. But the next site isn't built from stone that was already there. It's carved from scratch into a chamber held up by 10 women who have never stopped standing guard. Thracian tomb of Seuthopolis. In 1982, near the small village of Seuthopolis, Bulgarian archaeologists opened a burial mound unlike anything found before it, anywhere in the Thracian world. Just 3 years later, in 1985, it was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Inside, the burial chamber's stone ceiling isn't held up by columns or beams. It's supported by tin caryatids, full-height female figures carved directly from solid rock, arms raised as though physically bearing the weight of the roof above them, still bearing traces of the original paint that once covered this chamber in vivid, almost theatrical color. Above the entrance survives a rare painted frieze, showing a goddess placing a wreath onto the head of a mounted rider, with a sacred tree rendered beside them. Researchers connect the tomb to one of the Getic kings of the 3rd century BC, possibly Dromichates, a ruler mentioned in ancient sources as the man who captured and later released the Macedonian general Lysimachus. No inscription inside confirms his identity for certain, and after decades of debate, Thracian scholars from different countries still haven't reached agreement. Guarding the entrance itself is a carved stone lion, an unusually rare symbol in Thracian tomb art, and one of the most finely detailed examples of it ever found. This tomb is only one of over 100 mounds scattered across the surrounding Sporianovo Reserve, and local archaeologists admit that fully excavating what's still buried there would take more than 1 generation of specialists. A rider crowned by a goddess, and that same image of a mounted rider is about to reappear, carved into open rock, roughly 1,000 years later, by a completely different people. The thread that ties it all together, the Madara rider. High on a 100-meter limestone cliff near the village of Madara, a relief carving shows a horseman spearing a lion, with a dog running beside the horse. The carving sits roughly 23 meters above the ground, meaning whoever carved it worked from scaffolding or hung from ropes off the top of the cliff, cutting into hard limestone with no room for error. Most researchers date the Madara rider to the early 8th century AD, around 710 AD, commissioned in the early years of the Bulgarian state, most likely under Khan Tervel. Here's the part that should genuinely give you chills. This composition, a mounted hero, spear raised, striking down a beast, is almost the exact same image carved into the frieze at Seuthopolis and painted onto temple walls elsewhere in Thracian art. Roughly 1,000 years earlier, different people, different language, different religion entirely, and yet the same silhouette carved into the same stone across a full millennium. Weathering has taken its toll. Centuries of rain, frost, and exposure have worn away significant detail, and conservators still disagree on how to protect the open-air carving without damaging it further. But its importance was never in question. The Madara rider was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and for decades it's been stamped onto Bulgaria's stotinki coins. And now, with Bulgaria's move into the Eurozone, that same carving has been carried over onto the new Bulgarian Eurocent coins too. Which means right now, nearly every person in Bulgaria is carrying a copy of a 1,300-year-old cliff carving in their coin purse or their wallet. Most of them without ever knowing where the image actually came from. A king whose bronze face may have survived 2,000 years, and whose entire capital was left underwater rather than delay a dam. Gold older than the pyramids, pulled out of the ground by accident. A fortress raised by geology. 10 women holding up a roof in solid stone, and a horseman still riding across a cliff face. Now riding in every Bulgarian's pocket. This is the Bulgaria nobody puts on a postcard, the one hidden inside sacred mounds, sealed behind rotating stone doors, drowned under reservoirs, and carved into cliffs no one thinks to look up at. So tell me, out of everything we uncovered today, which site would you actually want to stand inside? The sunken streets of Seuthopolis, the gold grave at Varna, the rock city of Perperikon, or the 10 stone women of Sveshtari? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this is the kind of history you want more of, subscribe, because there are still mysteries hidden across this country nobody's telling yet.